Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio, your number one spot on the internet. If you want to hear about games that are in the Indiepocalypse bundle and collection zine, we're just here. I'm full of fries and ready to go. This is a rare dinner show for me where I was like, oh, I need to eat today, rather than I had a snack, finish the show, time to eat. But there's a reason why this show is later in the day. We've got a special guest who you may know from issue 22 of Indiepocalypse with the Distortion Beast, a cheesy comic. It's Sean Lowe. Sean, how are you doing today? Oh, perfect. Thanks for being here. Thank you for... I'm like, why is this person messaging me? Because I'm not used to having one person in a show sometimes. So I'm like, I got a little face, and I thought the little face had it. Anyway, I'm gonna start off before we even talk about your work. We got to ask the most important question. The diehards question is, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, being just like well, let's tell me a little bit about what is Distortion Beast Age User Comic? Yes. I think I learned fairly recently. Yeah. Yeah. How did you make that transition? Like, what did you build it in that case? Right, right. That's why I asked, because I feel like you weren't coming from that background. No, listen. What second? Whoa, wait a minute. I can't hear you for some reason. What's going on here? No, it's on my end. Why? What's going on here? You little aux input. Oh, you know what? Discord, you. One second. I wonder if it is getting saucy with me, and it's picking. Did it change? Yeah, for some reason, it changed the default. Try talking now.
All right.
There you are. Yes.
Can the chat hear me now?
Yes. Yes. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but OBS changed the audio source, despite running this for basically like, months upon months upon months upon months. Sometimes OBS gets in its head to change the audio source for Discord. It's done it twice, I believe, in 72 weeks.
OBS does some weird stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're
And
good
it'll
now.
I'm good now. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, so tell me a bit
Um
about the. Let's. We don't need to go back to how you heard it because you don't remember. But
yeah.
tell me a bit. Go back to tell me about the comic itself.
Yeah, sure. So the Distortion Beast, a Choosy comic, was originally, which is the digital project I made for Indiepocalypse, or put in Indiepocalypse, was originally a physical comic book that I had made um, in 2019 for an independent arts festival here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And it's basically a choose your own adventure comic book, which is why I call it a choosy comic because choose your own adventure are super litigious about
Yes.
that name. And so, yeah, it's a pick a path comic book, and it felt like I've always wanted to make games, and I've always played around with different types of games, whether it be tabletop or using RPG Maker
Yeah.
2003 when I was like 12, whatever. Um, and so Choosy felt like the right project to muck around with in a digital version using Unity because I was just figuring out the visual scripting
Yeah.
system that used to be called Bolt. And yeah, what I was saying when we realized that I could not be heard was that I've probably built it in an incredibly inefficient way
Right.
with, a billion nodes, but it works. It
Yes.
can be played.
That's
And
it's
that's the
like
main thing.
it's like drawing. You don't. The end audience doesn't need to know how many layers you used and how ugly they are and misnamed they are.
No, exactly.
They
Yeah,
just need to
no,
know what the end image looks like. Now, Sean,
exactly.
would you
Yeah.
believe me if I told you right now I am holding in my hand a comic I received on maybe Monday or Tuesday that in the year of our Lord 2022 is a Pick a Path comic book recently published.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's 2220 by George Wilesaw. It's from Avery Hill rather. I just got the Avery Hill collection in like
Oh, that's awesome.
this season. So it's like because it was like, oh, that is very cool. This like especially like the physical version of it because I had like never heard of a physical version except for 3 days ago.
Oh, right. Wow. Yeah. It's an interesting
Yeah.
trying to solve the biggest problem to solve when you're making a pick a path comic book is that when you're reading a pick a path like prose, you can quite easily kind of ignore the text on the pages that you're
Right.
not on. It's really hard to do that when they're pictures because your eyes like super drawn to them.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so
That's the point of the pictures.
yeah, and so you end up having to place pages because I drew all the pages kind of separately without any care for where they were going to be in the book.
Yeah.
Just knowing the path because I originally set the path up in Twine, so I knew what the structure was before I drew anything. And then when it finally got time to sort of laying the book up for print, it was kind of just, well, that page should go here because it's nothing to do with these pages, and it was just
Right.
kind of
Right. So
systematically doing that.
that hopefully even if people did see them they lack the context to know what's going on.
Exactly. And then if they are replaying it, then they'll start to get context and start to learn where items are and can start to maybe almost metagame
Right.
to get to the ending,
Yes, metagaming a book that you can theoretically pick any page in at any time.
Exactly. Well, and yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's like
spoilers, but you have to pick a certain page to even win the true ending. So
right.
it's it's very kind of meta heavy, I suppose, in that respect to being a pick a path comic book.
Right, right. And it's interesting that people will like I mean, I guess the idea in general that they'll just adhere to sort of the rules of a pick your a choose a path that you want to take book. Like they just kind of
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, I know what I'm getting into. I'm going to read this book in this real roundabout way because that's kind of the rules the book is laid
those are
down.
the rules. Yeah, but it's funny because I had two emails, I think, one from somebody I knew and then one from like a 12-year-old kid who had bought it at an arts festival emailing on his mum's email account. The kid was like I found the page that I need to get the item for the true ending, but there isn't a page that goes there. So he was like halfway to the point
Yeah.
I was making, which is that you have to cheat. And then the friend of mine who had found it was like, "I see what you've done here,"
I,
which I appreciated.
I really like that he was like, he's very sincere. I want to solve this thing, even though technically you can go to the correct page anytime.
Yeah,
And he had found the solution. He wanted to know how to get there.
yeah. It was just a very kind of sincere, like just a kid who playing by the rules wanted
Yeah.
to get there. It's just yeah, it was a cute email to receive. It was fun.
Yeah, kids are they wanna explore things, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
They wanna they
No,
wanna
definitely.
they wanna mess around in systems and figure things out, and don't necessarily want to like break the rules if it doesn't like benefit them, you know,
Yeah, totally.
or if they feel like cheated by it, which is which is a very interesting approach for like. So how much easier was it making it as a game? I mean, how did wait? So how did you cheat? Spoiler territory. How did you cheat in it in like a
In the
physical
game.
book? Yeah,
So in the so the cheat basically there's a page count drop
yeah,
down. Oh no, drop down or a text field on the title page in the game where you can actually pick a page of the book to go to start on. And I think I have the page number, if I remember rightly, the page number is in the corner when you're playing. And so you can theoretically um, process of elimination figure out what page isn't
yeah.
in the game just by exploring and then type that page in to get there.
And the same theoretically for like the physical book, where you just recognize
Exactly.
that there is a single page that none of the pages linked to, and that's how you get
Yeah,
to that page.
totally. If you played the book enough, you would realize that there's a page you have never been on
Right,
because it's directly in the middle of the book. So you will actually have seen the page at some point
right.
because one of the pages you go to will be next to it. It's on the
Yeah,
left side, I think. And so after you've played it 3 or 4 times, if or even a couple of times, you could probably notice, hey, how do I get here?
yeah. That's a
Um, so
no. I'm fascinated. It's a very clever idea of just the concept of page layout and just like it's like because there's so many spaces for like games to live in, and
yeah,
how a game like a story and a game that's functionally the same, or not functionally, narratively the same, rather,
yeah,
across mediums, but is like such a wildly different thing, even though it's kind of very much like a straight adaptation.
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting and a fun experiment to sort of play around with that in a different space.
Yeah, and also a very easier, much easier way to get it to other people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The physical books are it's hard. So I mean, you probably have this experience yourself, just
Yeah.
of going to festivals to sell Indiepocalypse and stuff. But selling stuff to people at festivals is hard. People
Yes.
do not want to buy stuff.
Right. You have to
um,
have like very much like the right kind of festival to go to.
yeah, totally. Yeah, the ones that I've been to, invariably people don't want to buy books, but they'll buy like stickers and buttons and
Right.
little things that, if I'm honest, will go in a drawer and never be seen again. Probably once they buy them.
Hey, but you know
Um,
what? You know what? That money goes in your pocket.
I mean, exactly. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah. Hey, theoretically, you
Yeah,
could end up on a water bottle. I've seen a lot more like water
true.
bottles covered in stickers nowadays.
Yeah, I have seen it. Well, and it's funny. For a while there, people were not putting stickers on laptops and other devices, but
Yeah.
I've seen a lot more of that now as well.
Yeah, my laptop is right next to me and covered in stickers.
Yeah, yeah. I have an iPad cover that's just every time I buy something off an artist, I try and get a sticker I can chuck on.
No, I very deliberately am. This is like, I maybe have space for one more, but it's kind of peaked. And I think if I take one off, I think I know what comes off, but it's so that people know what I'm all about, and is weirdly enough primarily comics.
Yeah, well, yeah. The I was visiting my in-laws a couple of weeks ago, and my mother-in-law saw a sticker on my iPad cover, and it was a sticker of a really awesome artist here in New Zealand, Sloane drew, and it's like this stoned Mickey Mouse with a cigarette in its hand, and it's a really cool little sticker. Um, and my mother-in-law was just sitting there looking at it, going, "I like the drawing, but I don't like the cigarette."
I don't.
Just,
Little
this made
little
me
do you
laugh.
know.
Yeah, it's extremely funny.
Um, Wait, what was it? Would you say Sloan Drew? Was that the name, or was that Sloan Verb Drew?
Sloane verb drew.
What is the artist's name offhand?
Um,
Sloan.
so so Sloane Hall, I'm pretty sure, but I can drop
Yeah, mostly because
their
I am a big artist hunter. You know, I like to always keep an eye out for artists, and like I'm always sort of like because I need to. They're very much what's the word I'm looking for? I try to curate a very specific vibe across the different issues, so I need to have like I like to have a good stockpile
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, nice. Sloane's got
ready
a
to
really
go.
incredible style. I really like
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and I like sometimes like I like to go from just like um something sometimes it'd be nice and painterly, and sometimes I want something very aggressive and or sometimes something very alternative and like zine culture,
Yeah.
like a
Oh,
stone Mickey
and
Mouse.
yeah, just you want the variety, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Each issue has a different feel.
I want people to like never know what they're gonna get. Yes, yes, yeah. This is the good shit, man. I'm talking about. Oh wait, I think I have seen this before.
You probably have seen their art, yeah.
This looks familiar. I wonder if I saw them just through like um I could have now like I said I own a lot, so it's entirely possible I owned. Wait a minute. Was this published somewhere else or did I? Sorry, I'm getting distracted looking at this page. I'm like, my dear, you're an artist. Looks ultra familiar. Like I have literally read this before.
You probably have seen their work before. It's got a really cool style, and I think
Yeah.
they've done some editorial illustration before. So
Well, let me just listen. If you see them, if you log on to Indiepocalypse in the first week of December and you see a very familiar artist, you understand the Indiepocalypse process for finding
excellent.
artists.
I mean, it's the only process, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like my. I have got artists for Indiepocalypse literally by meeting them, just like in person,
Right.
and just
That's
like
cool.
commissioning them on the spot, and being like, "Oh, you want to work on this thing? Yeah, I like your style. It's very cool." I'm a big fan of what's the word I'm looking for? Distinctive style.
Yeah.
I love it
Yeah.
when it looks like
Like only they could draw it out.
right, which makes most conventions actually like really bad for that
Yeah, that's difficult.
because at least I don't know what kind of conventions are around you, but the primarily at conventions they're mostly like sort of like fan conventions, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
the sort of main convention here is definitely largely fans.
yeah,
Um, so it's harder to find unique artists beyond going to like a zine fest or something
right.
like that.
Because plenty of those artists probably have like more distinct styles, but like the fan demand is to draw their favorite anime that week.
Yeah, exactly.
So you kind of get shoehorned into those styles.
Yeah, it's the thing that I've always found hard, I guess, is because I'm not really a fan artist. Like I don't really draw.
Right.
Well, when I've got time to draw, I'm drawing my own work, my own projects, and so I always find doing fan art not to be a waste of time, but it's just I never make time for it, or it does. I don't get the same sort of stuff out of it, the same sense of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
But it's what is what everybody at these festivals wants. Oh, can you draw this?
Yeah, can you draw this favorite character or that favorite character or
Yeah. The hardest is when somebody asks you to draw their D&D character, and they
oh,
give you like
like
they
just they just
they
do it
give
from
you
like
like
description?
yeah, like oh they're they tell you their race and their class and like what weapon they use. It's like cool. This is gonna look really generic. I don't know what like you will have an internal image, and I won't be able to match it. Like it's just
Right. Yeah, there is like
not in the 20 minutes that I have to draw this at this convention.
yeah, there it's very complicated because,
Yeah,
they're like it's like what do they want? Are they expecting do they just want anyone's interpretation of what their character looks like? Or
yeah,
do they want like
and
a very specific style of it in a way?
totally. And there's also I mean, drawings a lot of the time require a lot of planning to make them really stand out or be good, and it's hard. It's just hard to do that when they're standing over you, especially.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I cannot imagine if you just like turn in the wrong thing, or like I, I guess it is bad form to say no. I don't want this commission if you don't like it.
yeah. Well, it is bad for. I've never had that happen, so,
Oh,
thankfully,
yeah,
but I'm
luckily.
sure I'm sure there are people out there who have done that.
Who have been like, oh no, this is no,
No, I'm
thank
not
you.
paying for this. This isn't what I wanted.
Yes, no, I didn't. You got it all wrong. This is not what my character looks like.
Yeah,
They look way cooler, I guess. Yeah, I've never like. I guess I know going into when I commission people that I like their style overall, so I don't think I'll ever be disappointed.
yeah, and I that's the weird thing about the commissioning process is that I think to really get something out of it that you really like, you kind of have to open yourself up to it not being what you're thinking
Right,
because you're involving a whole other person's creative process
right,
in the thing that you want.
and you like
And
you don't know what they bring to that and like what their
no,
experience with it is.
exactly, yeah. Like, and the process they're going to go through in making it is going to change what the outcome is as well.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
my personal process is just I tell people I explain to them what Indiepocalypse is. I tell them they have to write the word Indiepocalypse on it somewhere, and then that's it.
yeah, well, that's a good process.
Yeah,
Well, because that, especially because at that point you're not giving them any. Uh, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but you're not sort of forcing their hand in any way. You're just saying, "Hey, it's almost like like a film competition. They're being
right.
given options to put into the thing that they need, like the name or whatever, and then they're just going hog wild with whatever they
Yeah,
want to draw, which is cool.
I like it. I like
And you
the.
get
Oh, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, and you can, and anyone could tell looking at Indiepocalypse is you get some really unique work out of like every issue is different in a really interesting way,
Yeah,
otherwise,
so
and and that's cool.
I would say probably just like glancing at them mildly right now. I would say the minority of them like even kind of have to do with video games.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one that's up there at the moment that's like got four eyes and the teeth, and it's just like
Yes.
flesh monster. Like that's a great cover, and it has very little to do with indie games and comics and stuff. It's just like a cool picture, and it's
or
awesome.
or does it?
Or I mean, or does it? Yeah,
Yeah, that's my tricky. Or does it? Or it's I like it to be this chaotic thing that people don't quite know what they're getting. I don't want to be ever pigeonholed into to be able to describe what an Indiepocalypse game is.
yeah, totally.
Because sometimes an Indiepocalypse game is an interactive comic.
Yeah, no, it's and like the variety. It's such a broad variety of games in an apocalypse. issue, which I think is what like that's the draw. It makes it it's so interesting to see what people are making
Yeah,
and
it
where
is very
people's
inspired.
creativity.
I was gonna say it's very inspired by comics and comic anthologies, of which there are 8 million.
Totally. And when you open one, you turn the page, you never know really what you're gonna be reading next. And
Yeah,
it's cool to do. It's cool to see that in games form because, and especially with the launcher and everything, it's just such an interesting like, oh, what is this? Okay, let's try this out.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
awesome.
I'm a big fan of the medium of anthologies. I think they do a lot to help out artists,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
and it goes quite a ways to showing people that hey, things can just kind of be anything. Even like themed, like comic anthologies are traditionally themed around a
Yeah,
subject, but you still don't know like the style, just like the visual style can be so drastically different from page to
and
page.
just and how somebody interprets the theme,
Right, right.
you know, because everybody's personal experience is gonna, or creative style, or what they're interested in drawing in the comic sense.
Yeah,
That's all gonna change how they interpret the theme. That's and that's what makes it awesome.
right. And I've always been weirdly connected to that. It feels like the closest, at least in the indie space, or the indie space I'm thinking of uh, comics feel closest than any other medium. Even though like the top end is very high, but on the low end it feels closer to like these hugely work intensive things that an individual can make.
Yeah,
But
yeah, definitely.
but still like there's a sense of well, I spent a lot of time to make a 18-page comic, or I spent a lot of time making a 10-minute game.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, you're right. In terms, especially in terms of the um, them being so intensely like they're just work intensive. So much work goes into them
Yeah,
for on the face of it such a small thing, but um, that's almost the that's almost the beautiful thing about them is that it's you're pouring so much effort into this one thing that you want to show to somebody, or even just for yourself for some sort of self learning, or even just for fun, whatever.
yeah. They're fascinating little mediums, and it's kind of like it's like getting a toe in both of them. If you now having done them both, having done it one way, do you think which way do you think would be harder to turn your interactive comic into a physical comic, or to go the other way around?
Ooh, I think if it had started as an interactive comic, it would have been a bit more dense.
Yeah,
And I think that would make it harder to turn it physical. Because starting with the physical comic, I mean, really, the digital game is really kind of just, it's almost an ebook, really. Like it's a
right.
custom ebook almost, because you just scroll the page. It knows when you get an item, so it keeps an inventory track for you. Um, Whereas if I had started digital, I know that there would have been way more branches, and it probably would have got because I've already got a project in my head that I might work on next year maybe
Yeah,
that would start there as a digital comic, but because I'm looking into Yarn Spinner and how I can maybe use that to show different panels depending on the branching
right.
um, in Unity, and so I think that would be a lot harder. That I would maybe have to have the plan to make it physical from the very beginning and be planning both simultaneously
Right, because
to figure out how it would work.
especially to not accidentally like screw yourself with the infinite canvas, just like oh,
Exactly.
this doesn't translate to a page as neatly anymore.
Yeah, yeah, you'd have to. I think you'd have to plan both simultaneously, and maybe even exclude some branches from the book.
Right, like how would you how would you make a
I don't
panel
know.
pop up dynamically in a physical book? Do you have like little flaps on the side?
Yeah, I mean that's an option. I've seen comics like that not necessarily pick a path ones, but ones where they've had folding pages that you read by unfolding them,
Right. Yeah.
which are very cool, but just seems like a lot.
Like at the end of this, you just wind up with building stories.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Which is like also a very cool project generally, I think, and another like a very weird adaptation of kind of like cross between comic and game, but more on the comic side.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I definitely want to make more stuff like this.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. And maybe bring in some animation a little bit in there so that
right.
it's not just stills.
That's
I don't
that's
know.
that's the other thing that digital can't,
Yeah,
you can't do it physically is
yeah, exactly. It's yeah, and my my normal um is scope creep to
yeah,
the nth degree. Like I'll think of an idea that's really cool, and then um like I thought of a zine that I wanted to make about 3 weeks ago, and now it's a board game, and
right.
I've like play tested it once, and I've built this thing in Tabletop Simulator so I can test it. It's like this was supposed to be an A5 zine.
Yeah, now you'd be lucky to fit it on an A5 at best.
E- exactly. Now it's going to have to be a box like of stuff.
Yeah, and
It's
then
just yeah.
suddenly you can't print a box from the office printer.
No, no, definitely not. Um, yeah, it just yeah. No, scope creep is my dearest friend. I would say I was about to call it my enemy, but it's not. I love it.
Right, right.
It's what happens to everything I ever make.
It's just
Becomes way bigger than it needs to be.
listen. We all have friends with who encourage bad habits in us, but they're still our friends.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Listen, scope creep is a friend that keeps you out too late at night. You enjoy your time, but you kind of regret it the night after.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just yeah. The when I first did Choosy, it was originally just going to be like a little thing, and then by the time I had finished planning it in Twine, it was going to be 45 pages, and I had 2.5 months to draw them all
Yeah,
before the print date, before the festival.
right.
And so then it was just like getting home from my day job and basically sitting down and drawing for 6 hours straight every night for the next 3 months because I needed to get this ridiculous project done just so that I could print it.
Yeah, that, and now where is scope creep hanging around during this?
Well, Scope Creep made it a 45-page book
Yeah,
rather
and
than
then what?
a...
You
Well, then
just
it became a full, like, then it was a full color comic, and then it
yeah.
was,
Yeah,
you know,
so Scope Creep gave you this massive project that screwed off to take care of itself. What a
yeah,
friend.
exactly. Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah.
What a pal that is. But
Yeah. I don't dislike it. I understand it's my
yeah,
it's the thing that I do, but I like it. I enjoy thinking of ways that something could be bigger and better and more interesting. So it's yeah, it's it's fun.
no, I had to train my Indiepocalypse is a result of Scope Creep, if that makes sense, and not
Yeah, I mean, where did the idea for Indiepocalypse start for you?
um, partially from anthologies, and
Yeah,
partially from the fact that I kept having to like, what's the opposite of scope creep? What's the impulse to make your things shorter, but you can't, because that's what Indiepocalypse came from. This idea of, well, I want to make short games, but people won't buy them.
right.
But people will buy, so I realized, like, I think I knew this, but like it came back into stark contrast or stark. Uh, I became very more aware of it recently. That like a very, a very pivotal moment of like me creating Indiepocalypse was I was at TCAF, the Toronto
Yeah,
Comics and Arts Festival, and I was tabling next to Meredith Gran, who was showing off Perfect Tides at the time,
Right.
and she had just like pieced out like halfway through the first day, presumably to go to her comics table, where she presumably was selling a lot of comics. And I was
Yeah.
like, "We're suckers. All us game devs are here and just like throwing away money for it's like PR trips."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what if I was selling things? I think by that time I may have actually. Did I have a zine that's. I may have. I can't remember if I had an actual zine that time or not. I don't think I did, or I might. Hard to remember.
Right.
But at some point, TCAF inspired me to make a zine myself to sell, just like a little game zine, a little RPG zine.
Yeah.
But then I was like, this is bad. People ought to make money, and
Yeah, off their little games, off their little art projects and stuff.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's very because I would go to like indie comic shows, and granted, I'm like a comics pervert, but still, I'm not the only one who's filling up bags full of like 15, 10-page comics.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, you go to any comic art festival or zine fest or anything, you'll see people who are taking home, a dozen different little things.
Yeah, and like, why can't you go to a little indie fest and get like a dozen little games?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
That
And so Indiepocalypse is born.
Yeah, exactly. That's me trying to create that like the zine art culture, that indie culture that I think exists in like zines and comics and music to some extent, but that just doesn't quite exist in games.
Yeah, well, it's almost like the artists are there. Like there are people making those
Yeah,
games,
right.
those experiences.
I
I mean, you
I've got no problem getting 10 games every issue.
exactly. I mean, I imagine even prior to Indiepocalypse, even just looking on Itch for an afternoon, you would be able to find 1,000 little projects that somebody's made and put up because it was a thing that they were having fun with that week or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's definitely the people there. It's just that struggle of getting the, I suppose, general public to
Right.
understand that people are making the stuff.
Right. And there's not the same like kind of $5 zine audience that there is for like 12-page zines that there are for 20-minute games.
Yeah,
Even though
yeah, yeah.
like that 12-page zine probably takes you like 20 minutes to read at the
Or
most.
if at the most, if there, right?
Right.
That there's this gamer hang up over time spent on something that you buy, which
Yeah.
is just ridiculous. Because yeah, I mean, I'll buy a zine or a comic or whatever at a show and take it home, and I've probably read it when I get home, and it's done in 5 minutes. It goes into my zine drawer.
Yeah.
I'll return to it at some point, have another look at it, but I don't ever think about the time I spent reading it. That's a bizarre way to calculate something's value.
Right. Right. I had someone at a show once tell me that he's like, well, if I'm going to pay $16 to see a movie, and I'm paying, and a movie's about an hour and a half, a game should at least, like, he was like, had this weird calculation.
Yeah,
I was like, what?
that's bizarre. Yeah,
Yeah, there's like this very, and like, I don't know why that kind of like value relationship exists with games more than it does with like, no one's like, oh, I'm not paying $10 for this album. It's not a double LP.
yeah. No one's saying that. Well,
Yeah.
even just like I'm not paying, like deciding not to buy a book. I mean,
Right.
books can be a little bit expensive, but like not buying a book because it's not as long as this other book. Like,
Right.
what? What are you talking about?
Right. You're not gonna
Does
get.
it matter that a book's longer? Like, sometimes that's bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not what you want.
And it's not even like songs, replayable, but how readable? How often are people rereading books? No,
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean people are obviously, but not like.
I mean, depending on who they are and what their reading habits are like.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a lot of books on my shelves that I either haven't read because I'm a terrible fiend for buying books,
I
um,
I am too, but
but you know, I'll read them all eventually.
I have and I have them all sorted too. I have like a nice Labib library for all my books. Ooh. I was actually thinking about um, going through my zine. I use a milk crate. I got one of those like filing milk crates
Oh yeah,
for all my zines. That way I can like sort them by name and everything.
that's a good idea.
And I was thinking like, well, I'm like a real. I get very organized, you know.
Yeah.
My. What's your okay? So what is your book organizing setup?
Um,
What is your structure to it?
there's very little structure. Um, you've brought me great shame in thinking about it.
Oh no.
No, it's fine. Um, there's not really anything organized. If I've got a series, they're obviously together.
Right.
Um, but beyond that, it's kind of just where stuff fits, and that's largely because I just don't have enough bookshelves in my house, and so I've got to figure that out. And then all my zines I've got in a drawer under my desk, and they probably need to be organized. They're not organized. Um, but I do have like a comic long box for singles and stuff, but I don't buy as many comic singles anymore just because the our local comic shop got bought by bought by people who didn't really care about comics. They only really cared about wargaming.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then uh, due to, I guess, bad presentation of customer support, people kind of stopped going,
Yeah.
and then they sold. Well, they went online only and closed the shop up, which
I
kind of sucked. But that kind of describes the death of small retail
I
in
had
cities anyway.
I had I think we had at one point two comic shops and then zero comic shops.
Yeah,
Well, you know, they were comic
yeah.
slash gaming shops, like you kind of have to be.
You kind of have to be. You've got to be comics and then also war games and tabletop. The
Like we can't
and
all
now
be
and now
like the beguiling or whatever, you know.
now we're just left with shops that are. I mean, they're fine, and they do sell the stuff, so that's cool. But they're just like 60% pop vinyl
Yep.
figurines,
Yes.
and
That
I just can't with that. Like, why? Like, why do I have to walk into the shop and see a wall of it? It's it's just too much.
yeah.
Like,
They my I mean my local chain, which I've this is one of those things I didn't realize was a local chain, but then I realized or it made sense. But because I had seen them so widespread in my area, I was like, oh, everywhere. But anyway, it's called like Newberry Comics, but like the comics section was maybe two shelves,
yeah,
and the rest of it was like, depending on which one you're going to, maybe wall to wall Funkos and
yeah,
T-shirts and vinyls. But
yeah.
since people
No,
have been getting more, since the kids have been getting more into manga, you know,
yeah,
it has those those get some prime focus sometimes.
yeah. Pretty much. These shops are basically just 60% Funkos, and then there'll be like one shelf of like only DC and Marvel comics, and then there'll be a shelf of manga, and then your usual trading cards or whatever. But it's
Right.
yeah,
If you're
I miss
lucky,
having like a dusty old comic shop that
yeah.
sells singles.
Yeah. If you're lucky, like if I go to, there's a couple of cool Newberries. I say cool because I think they have like they'll have like weird indie stuff sometimes
Yeah,
from like some small press label just out of nowhere. Like I don't know if it's like sometimes it's local, sometimes it's like they might have. Someone might have one of these Avery Hill books I have right in my hand that they bought at like retailer or something as a retailer off their Kickstarter. But
Right.
like
Yeah.
those ones that are like that are very few and far between.
Yeah. Yeah. Just they just become harder and harder to find. I get more luck getting like small press stuff from there's a local bookshop that's independently owned and that seems to still be sticking around, which is cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, at some point you just like have good rent or whatever, and
yeah, exactly.
enough dedicated regulars.
Yeah, enough people who come in like me and buy a book whenever they enter the shop, even if they don't need another book.
Right, right, because it's the book pervert demographic.
Yeah,
The people who's like, and they probably stock their shelves like you stock your shelves, where
yeah,
things fit.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
With like, yeah, I've been in those bookstores before. Sometimes there's just piles on the floor, and there's
yeah. There's just that stack.
right.
Yeah,
They're sorted by genre, but within the genre, it's sorted more by feeling, I suppose.
yeah. This feels right being here.
Yeah,
There's the stack of secondhand stuff.
yeah.
Just
I,
yeah,
I am the antithesis of that. I,
hyper organized.
I go so, like, I mean, I did mention my zine crate that's has file folders and is alphabetized,
Yeah,
but then my shelves themselves, they go by size, then publisher, then title. And I only occasionally break it if like a single author has different titles of their books, but they like are visually similar,
right.
and then I'll just stick them all together. I own what the people might call too many comic books.
In terms of like trade paperbacks,
Yes,
or
yeah, I don't buy singles.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
It's just like
yeah. I
I
buy trades these days as well.
I only buy trades or as they say, graphic novels.
Yeah, they're still just comics.
Yeah, yeah. Technically, that's what they are because they're not released individually. They're released as a single thing,
Yeah,
but they're comics. I'm cresting 2,500, very close.
2,500 like trades.
Yeah, yeah,
Damn,
yeah. Like I said,
that's that's awesome.
this is a like a probably decades worth of just like buying stuff, bit by bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Back when I was the only kid, back when I was probably the only kid around who was like, this JoJo's Bizarre Adventure thing is pretty cool. And I was
yeah,
buying the floppies back when they were only selling part 4 in stores.
yeah,
Wait, no, part 3. Sorry, part 3. It
yeah. I
wasn't,
went through a
and they weren't even calling it that because there were no other parts.
yeah. I went through a big. There was a period of time where I was buying a lot of comics.
Yeah,
Um, around 2011, 2012, and then I fell off for a little bit. If finally, because I think I was playing a lot more games at the time,
yeah,
and I worked at my last job. I was just like not a good. I wasn't a good headspace at my last job. I think I was just playing games at the time and not really reading or creating anything.
yeah, yeah. Games can have that kind of that kind of sedative kind of quality to them,
Kinda, yeah. Especially big ones.
Right, where you're just
You
like
know,
walking around collecting things.
well, here you're just checking boxes, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, my problem with a lot of big AAA stuff these days is that it's just all checking boxes,
So
checklists of content to
right.
complete rather than
So
like
they can unlock new checklists later.
exactly, yeah,
And
it's
then there is like a very middle of the road story wrapping it all together.
yeah, and you're almost not really following that because you're just checking boxes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's weird. And you can never tell if it's are they this big and with this many checkboxes because like did they start was the plan for it to be this big? Because why would you plan for something to be this big?
Right. Well, because
And would it not?
it all comes back to gamers want their hours,
I know, but it's how many of those hours were fun is my thing. Like,
Yes.
you know,
I
if you played it like I played I never finished it, but I played the whatever the most recent Assassin's Creed was, the Viking one,
Yeah.
and I played it for. I think the last time I put it down and I never touched it again. My playtime was at 60 hours,
Yeah.
and I I know that I was probably only 30% of the way through it,
Right.
and
Right.
at
And you
at
know
that
that because
point,
there's a little percentage thing in the menu telling you that.
yeah, and I can vaguely see how many icons are on the map to check off, and I know that you don't have to do all of it, but part of me wants to.
Right.
And
Well,
and
you
I was just
get better swords or whatever. You know.
yeah, and I was just thinking about the fact that maybe I had only had fun for the first 15 hours, and at that point it was like, why would I put myself through playing this again for another 80 hours just to say that I finished it?
Right.
I don't know. It's just yeah.
There
So
was.
the big games like that that cost that much money to make, um, just end up not really respecting the player's time
I
in
want.
terms of like overall fun. It's
I,
just yeah, I don't know,
yeah,
weird.
I want to find the exact quote. Contributor of the 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 zine, ouch, or Super Blizzard, or Unlucky Chloe, whatever she goes by specifically, and more on the broadest sense, whatever people. I never know when people have multiple names what name people know them under.
Yeah,
But anyway, she was talking about Breath of Fire and the idea of the beginning town of an RPG or JRPG, and be like, let's be real, you only want to play the beginning of an RPG. First hour, yes, the first hour of an RPG is its own genre of game.
yeah, yeah. I'd agree with that.
That kind of, oh, I'm just in the town. I'm understanding the stakes. I'm kind of figuring out what's going on. The world is opening up, and then it opens up, and then you collect 50,000 feathers and go chocobo racing or
Yeah,
whatever it is you do. And I like RPGs, you know,
yeah. Me too.
and JRPGs. I'm kind of fascinated. I get fascinated by them from time to time. But it's
Yeah, I it was like the genre that I played the most growing up, but I think especially when I was younger, um, playing like the first hour or the first couple of hours of JRPGs was kind of what I did. Like I
yeah,
didn't really play them further than that, whether or not that was an attention span thing or once maybe it's like I've played the Midgar part of FF7. I don't know how many times. Like,
yeah, no,
like I've escaped Midgar, I don't know, 10 or 15 times probably over the last 20 years. And it's just a really good little chunk of the game. And I've only played further than that, a couple of times.
I did. I was gonna say have I beaten it, but I have. I didn't beat like I played a lot of those games as they came out, and I got them, but I didn't beat one, like a Final Fantasy until like well into my late teens, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was in my 20s probably when I started picking them up again. I played a lot of them, and like I, and I mean, I got Final Fantasy 12 when it came out,
Yeah.
and that's a great game. But the thing that turned me off it, and this is the dumbest thing that
I think I know it's coming, but I want to hear it anyway.
the reason I didn't finish it was because there was that thing going around online where it was like, oh, you can use the gambit system to auto level yourself to level 99 or whatever.
Yeah.
You just like put a rubber band around the analog stick so that you're running around in this one hallway of this dungeon. You leave it on overnight. When you get up the next morning, you'll be a level 100. I did that, and then I never played it again because all the character progression was gone. I wasn't really leveling up. I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
just like I just like busted the game for me, and
That
just never finished it at that point. And it wasn't until the re-release, a decade or longer than that later, that I actually played it through.
Yeah, I would be honest, the thing I was expecting that you're gonna get very completionist, but like I didn't get that spear that you have to get by not unlocking,
Oh yeah.
and you're like,
Well,
this
no,
sucks.
that's I did remember that I did miss it, but
Yeah,
that I know that the thing that stopped me from continuing playing was because I had like leveled up too much. But
right.
yeah, I don't know, just
No,
yeah.
I've definitely recently I've been playing, even as of like last week, I've been playing a lot of the Breath of Fire games that I never played growing up because they was like, oh, those are subpar Final Fantasies or whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean, three
But
and four are amazing.
they're yeah, I mean, just on like a visual standards, they're probably like
Breath of
some
Fire 4 is honestly one of the best looking games of
yeah
that era.
yeah.
Like,
I
just
I
yeah.
posted a picture of it like
Yeah, I saw you posted the one about the blanket
yeah, like all these little touches, like you
on Nina's
understand these
list.
characters just by looking at them.
Totally. I just yeah, there's so much. They're so expressive.
Right.
Just such good art direction, great sprites.
It feels like
It's yeah,
um like I understand, like I feel there was once where I was going to be like, I really love the polygonal PS1 style everyone's going to, but wouldn't it be cool if there were people also did the PS1 pixel style? Until I realized the PS1 pixel style was like 20 years of people honing their craft, you know?
yeah, exactly.
So like
And
Capcom's
yeah,
style around that PS1 era is just like outstanding.
yeah. Basically, the best artists doing the best work. There's a there's an indie studio here in Christchurch that are making a game that has got a Breath of Fire 4 vibe in terms of 3D environments with sprite work for the
Yeah.
characters. And it is kind of cool to see like that kind of faux 3D sprite work um, in a different form.
Yeah, yeah, because
Um,
it's a very specific kind of thing that people people haven't really emulated yet recently. It hasn't
yeah.
really come back in the style because it's very hard and complicated
Oh,
and like
yeah.
super work intensive to make
Unbelievably.
all these gorgeous, like, to give them all this different personality. You know, you have to.
Yeah. And especially on, I mean, they've kind of forced the angle in some scenes for Breath of Fire, but in a lot of those environments, being able to rotate the camera, even if it is only four directions, is kind of incredible that it all still works.
Right, like
That
there's
at no point do the sprites feel like they're disconnected from the environment that they're in.
right. You kind of understand even like the like you understand the like the void around everything, like that your world map sometimes just kind of it becomes part of the visual language
Yeah,
in a weird way. Like you don't have to see like grass extending out throughout the horizon every time. You just kind of get, oh no, I'm in this space, in this
yeah,
sort of picture
exactly. Yeah,
box space.
yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
It's I would like to read Breath of Fire as a series is the one where I it's the one series that I'm always a little bit disappointed never kept going.
right.
Um,
Oh,
just
I'm no,
just because it
sorry.
was such a good, I don't know, I was just because it had such good art direction, especially through 3, 4, and even the fifth one, Dragon Quarter. Even though that was contentious, still
I'm
really
super
good looking
excited for
game.
Dragon Quarter.
I'm excited for you. I really like it. Um, but it's the one that I guess just didn't sell, and Capcom decided, oh, it's because people don't like Breath of Fire anymore. It's
Right.
not true.
Not because there's
Not
this
true.
very weird experimental design.
Yeah, you just made a really experimental game, and people weren't expecting it. But you still did a good thing,
I
and
I
you know,
I was truly blown away when I played 4, and it was like I'm shocked at the front party back party system. It did not like it seems like the thing that could have become a standard.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Like it makes so much sense, like strategically and also like thematically. Like you always, because that was that thing as a kid. I was like, "Where's the rest of my party members?"
yeah,
And in Breath of Fire 4, they're right behind you.
yeah. They're right behind you. It's just such a good system.
Yeah.
And even like, I mean, that whole battle system is just very, very well designed.
Yeah.
From like spell combining to the front back
Right. To like there.
to learning stuff off the enemies. Like it's all
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Like is that like that front back just kind of alleviates the whole problem of always getting behind once a character dies.
Yeah, yeah.
So many smart choices. Anyway, this is not
This is not the Breath of Fire podcast.
no. Listen, I would love it to be. I have that book. That
The
like
art of.
that udon book.
Yeah,
It's
such a
like,
good book.
yeah, I love that monster people era of RPG design. That it was
Yeah.
like this like Shining Force does a lot of it too. And there's I think maybe a little bit of it. There's a little bit of it in Phantasy Star. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
if you were a kid who grew up with just Final Fantasy, there's like so much like all those other like if you were a Final Fantasy snob kid growing up, or maybe you just didn't have the money for those other ones, so you went with Final Fantasy, there's like a real treat in all those like other franchises out there.
Yeah, 100%. I
Um,
play them.
one of the things I think about in a game the most, more than anything else, is in Breath of Fire 3, when Ryu is like hanging out with like his friends who are tougher and stronger than him. He like
Yeah.
swings his sword like a little wimp and doesn't look at the monsters. But,
Yeah.
but once it's just him and Nina, he's like takes a very strong stance and he's like trying to be a tough guy. It's like there's no functional change in the gameplay, but it expresses so much character without telling you anything.
Yeah. And you didn't. There's very few games that did that kind of character work in their art
Yeah,
at that time. Like there's just so much effort put in to make those characters feel like people.
right. It feels very much like the fighting game. I wonder how much of that is that like Capcom makes fighting games.
Yeah,
So
that's.
that studio just
I hadn't,
thinks like that.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Because those games are all about expressing characters through animations and art.
Yeah, totally. Huh.
But anyway, we're approaching the end of the hour for this show, if you believe it.
Wow, jeez, that went fast.
Yeah, it kind of screams by, and I like to keep
Yeah.
like to keep these single ones to around an hour at the most. As much as I could keep talking about JRPGs forever.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's someone I definitely want to talk about, the JRPG expert. One of the people who thinks a lot about JRPGs, contributor of the zine, Srika Lillian, or full good another person with 3 names, but it does a lot of JRPG posting.
Right.
And gets me thinking about recently just finished not Breath of Fire, or Final Fantasy 2,
Right.
and talked about it. And yeah, those games are cool. I remember when I learned, anyway, before I started talking about Dragon Quest and how Dragon Quest is actually super cool. When I was a kid, I thought there was just the grinding one, and then you can do really
Yeah.
but then there's like really cool story beats within Dragon Quest and everything. And anyway, RPGs are cool. Video games are cool. Go back if you played a game as a kid. Go back and play it as an adult.
Yeah,
You'll-
it changes your perspective of it quite a lot. It's
You really
interesting.
appreciate how much of a middle manager Kefka is. And how
Yeah.
how pissy he is about it. But anyway, we're closing the show down. Where is the thing? Sean, what have you got to promote as we make our exit here?
Well, my kind of current ongoing project at the moment is a webcomic called The Last Magi,
And where might one
which
find that?
you can all find that at www.thelastmagi.com.
Perfect.
The last magi lastmagi.com. And yeah, if you could read that and share it far and wide, that would be awesome. There's the biggest shift in sort of webcomics over the last 10 years was that, Webtoon and Tapas sprung up as platforms, and then it inevitably made sure that people with their own websites basically got no viewership whatsoever.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that. I love that billboard. Do you have those webtoon billboards over in New Zealand?
no, we don't have them here, but I've seen them. Just awful.
Yeah.
Um, so if you could read it,
Right. Right.
share it around, I would love that. That would make me very happy.
Support a
And I hope
comic
you enjoy
artist. Support a comic artist on a platform that doesn't hate them.
it. Yeah.
What a this I that's what is they for people who haven't seen it. There's a billboard to explain, to not just be coy about it. There's a billboard that says like your novel writer's favorite side hustle or whatever, and
Yeah.
it's for like
Comics are a
webtoon.
side hustle.
Yeah.
Just actively malicious towards
Right.
their own creators. Just bizarre.
Right. Because of course artists are people you pay $10 for on Fiverr, to do 50
Yeah.
pages.
Yeah. Never mind the fact that an individual page probably takes them 8 hours minimum.
No, of course not. And like it's not that you can even tell the difference between a writer artist and just an artist.
Yeah.
There is I remember reading a comic where like the difference was like stark. I think I was reading like a Conan that fuck what's the guy, the guy he did that one of our superheroes who I'm also forgetting the name of that superhero comic that he did, Astro City. Who's that guy?
Oh,
They look
his
so
name's
sharp in
gone.
their fancy uniforms. I think was another one. Kurt Busiek.
Yeah, yeah.
He had done like a run on Conan, and there was like it was very wordy. And then I think like after him was Mike Mignola, and like the difference in like how much words immediately is so apparent,
Yeah.
and then how much more work
Yeah.
like the art starts doing.
Yeah, totally.
Not to say that the artist was bad when like Kurt Busiek was writing, but it was
No,
like
but
the
the
difference.
difference in like volume of words and how much the words is telling the story versus the art.
Yeah, the difference in like the workload, how it was spread,
Yeah.
and like how much like the artist was allowed to tell the story.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Vignola also was it like a writer drawer for that, or if he just wrote it. He probably that early on. I bet he was doing both.
Surely.
Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but
No,
I mean, Mignola writes and draws a lot of his stuff anyway.
yeah, he's a true treasure, honestly.
He's just incredible. Yeah.
He's it felt very. There was somebody over at Janus Films and Criterion who like kind of was on my same wavelength when I was thinking. Oh, now I'm forgetting her name. She's an artist. She's sort of does like dark fantasy, hard colors, a little bit like Mignola does.
Okay.
I forget her name now. This is the Indiepocalypse Radio, the show where Andrew forgets everyone's names all the time. Is it Jen something? I might just be thinking Jen because I was looking at Jen Woodall lately or recently in Labib. Oh, Becky Cloonan, that's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I did not look that up. I just remembered that. But anyway, the first few Del Toro Criterion collections, Mignola does the covers. He does like Chronos, Devil's Backbone. Was it just Chronos and Devil's Backbone? It might have been just those two. And then Becky
Right.
Cloonan does Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah. She's got a great style as well.
Yeah.
Very, very thick brushwork that just
Yeah.
looks really nice. She did some short, like, gothic fantasy comics
Yes.
years ago that I managed to get, which they're just really cool.
I have a pin. One of my pins is a little slime she had done.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah, she's got great work.
Anyway, there's a lot of great comic artists, and you can find them at your local zine fest. Like blew my mind when I went to my local indie comic show, and I discovered, or there was the first time I saw, and a name that I don't know how to pronounce, a name that I most certainly cannot pronounce, Julia GFRO Ariar. Does amazing, dark, weird, sexual, gothic stuff.
Right.
But anyway, I want people. I guess the end goal of this story is you should buy Indiepocalypse because I want to create a. I want you to one day be able to go to your local indie game show and you open up like, guys, check what I got, and you open up and it's like, why is this guy just like jerking off over a grave? What book did you buy, Andrew? And you're like, it's very cool. It's super cool. It's called Flesh and Bone, and it's amazing. And I want people to like be able to just like weird shit, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Is that no? Before I end the show, before I say, as I'm saying, go to indiepocalypse.com, buy Indiepocalypse. Go to if you buy Indiepocalypse 22, this person Sean here will get a little kickback at some point.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I would also really like it if anybody does either already own 22 or buys in 22 and plays Choosy the Distortion Beast. Flip me a message if you ever get the secret ending, because I like to see if people get there.
I was right. It was Flesh and Bone. I was correct. The last mice I went to, she was sharing a table with Katie Skelly, which was like, what a 1-2 punch of modern indie comic artists. What a truly some of the best in the biz right now. Andrew's besides obviously the present company included, of course, you know. Go read indie comics. I'm a big fan. I'm slower to reading digital ones because I'm very particular about finishing my physical pile, but I'm getting very close. I'm almost done. I'm just finishing up like that Midnighter run. I read very few superhero books, but I like that. I like the Midnighter. That what's his face. The game of me forgetting people's names. You know, the guy who did the Midnighter Apollo run recently. The one.
I know the one. Who was it? I forget.
Is it Kevin something? I think it's a Kevin. If I'm remembering correctly. Midnighter Apollo. No, it's Steve Orlando.
All right, Fernando Blanco. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's cool. If you want to see like if you want to see someone kind of take the the sort of Midnighter Apollo punchline that I think they kind of sort of originally were, maybe, and make it a cool comic.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't know if I ever read their sort of like Wild Storm days or whatever. Anyway, nice try, Andrew. We're not going to start talking about comics here. Also really like Usagi Yojimbo. Super, super cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, truly like a real classic of... It's weird to be like so like living so close to like Eastman and Laird and all those guys. Like the Eastman Foundation was like 5 hours from where I was.
Right.
Topatico's in the same state as I am. It's just a cool place if you like comics. Anyway, shut it down. The show is ending. I'm finding the break. I'm finding this thing that says go to sleep before I start rambling again about comic books. And I'm going.
It's too easy.
It's so easy. Listen, I've threatened before that if once I become famous, my Vanity Pop Culture podcast is a comic book one. so I can force people to sit down and read like Super Mutant Magic Academy and talk about how the thematic similarities between Drifting Classroom and The Woods That's homework for you back home. Read The Drifting Classroom and The Woods and realize, oh, it's kind of the same story, but told so differently.
Yeah.
Anyway, goodbye.